Okay. I got a couple comments, we'll make, and then I'll certainly be willing to take questions. For our first scrimmage, I felt things started really, really well. I thought our guys did a lot of good things. The thing that we've got to grow is we got to be consistent. We got to learn to finish. We went through a phase where we were not very good. And I think we finished a little better than we did in that phase, but we got to be consistent, and that's what we got to do to be able to compete in this league. You got to be that. You got to be consistent. You got to be as good as you can be on every play, and that's what it's going to take. And we had some plays, like I said, I'm really excited about. Not going to single anybody out. Not going to talk about individuals. I'll talk about the unit and where we got to push to get better. And with that said, I'll start taking questions if that's okay.
Raise your hand. We'll get a mic to you. Tom? Your turnover
count, based on what we've been talking to the guys, has been pretty high throughout the camp so far. Can you speak to that? And did you just not hit your turnover count today?
No, we didn't. If I'm not mistaken, I think we only had 2, and that's not good enough. We put a lot of emphasis on it. We spent a lot of time working on technique. We don't expect turnovers to just happen. We expect to, have to force them. Occasionally you're going to get a gift, but it's something that you have to work on. And there's a technique in getting the ball out, and we work on that. But the biggest thing when it's really working well is when our players believe in it. And sometimes when you're out there and you're playing your 60th or 7th play, it's a little tougher to remember those techniques, but you always go back to your training. You always go back to your training, and we feel it's important. Particularly where football is today. In terms of a lot of fast-paced offense, and there's a few things that we're going to hang our hat on. There's a lot of things that certainly can affect the game for us defensively to be able to affect the game. The easiest and best way is turnovers, and if we can get turnovers and guys, if we can average 3 turnovers a ball game, we'll be the number 1 team in the nation. There's no question about that. And we set that goal there for that reason. And we didn't reach that today. Like I said, we've been good, thus far in preseason, and I'm sure it is. The offense been working on protecting the ball and keeping the ball, and they did a great job of that today. We had our opportunities, we just didn't capitalize on them.
Coach, how are you feeling about your depth at linebacker? You shuffled a couple of guys inside. How do you feel about that group?
With where we are at camp right now, I feel real good. And we got 5 or 6 guys that I feel good about, and I'm not going to single them out, but we pull Scooter after a certain number of plays today. I'm not going to talk about that number. I'm not going to go out there and scrimmage him for 90 plays. He's a proven guy in the SEC. We pulled him, and we didn't have any drop-off. Grant Morgan can play. I mean, there's no question about that. He proved that all spring long, and so there was no drop-off there. And Bumper and Hayden Henry right now, and if we were playing a 3 linebacker scheme, Hayden would be our starting Sam linebacker. There's going to be some games we're not going to play a 3 linebacker scheme, and he's going to be a guy that's going to get on the field a good bit at the weak side during that. So we got several guys that we feel real good about. Do we have enough depth? If we stay healthy, I feel good.
Hey, Chief, I think you got your 2 redshirt sophomore cornerbacks that I think have 12 starts between them. Those are kind of your veteran guys. You got a lot of young guys behind them. How do you feel about the cornerback position, overall, what you got starting and backing up?
Well, again, it's an area that we need to stay healthy in. We're not afraid to play young guys. There are going to be some freshmen play out there too, and they've got to grow. They got to grow to get ready. We got young guys that are starting, and we got younger guys that are backing them up. That doesn't bother me. We got to do a great job of coaching, fundamentals and helping them to be fundamentally sound. We gave up some 50-50 balls today that I'm not real excited about, and it just gets down to fundamentals. You don't go out there and a kid just plays that ball. You got to teach them, and you got to put them in those situations, and that's where I made the statement at the media day when we got started. The thing that we got to do a great job of coaching. and we got to get those guys ready to play. So I feel good about our talent. We just got to keep pushing the envelope, and we got to get those young guys ready to play. Because guess what? There are going to be some freshmen that are going to play at corner for us. So that's just the way it is. Been there before, done that. Don't lose any sleep at night as long as we're preparing in the daytime.
It's been almost a week, but you went sprinting down the sideline. What was your inspiration to follow Catalon down there?
I could tell you a couple of stories, but the only one I'm going to tell you, because I used to do it a little bit different, and I may be able to do that later on, but when I started to get in my profile position, I said I hadn't done this in a long time. I better make sure I can do it, so I'm going to have to practice on it a little bit. But I like to get involved with the players and the excitement, and they love it. They love it. There's no question about that. And when we get a turnover like that and we got a chance to score, and that makes a lot of other guys start buying into what we're doing. And as I mentioned earlier, we work on things that help us, in terms of takeaways, but it's really our players buying in.
Chad said you limited reps for Sosa and Scuda, but then he said they coached, kind of helped coach up the young guys. What kind of job did they do in your mind of kind of coaching up those guys when they weren't on the field?
Let me say it. Let me put it in these terms. Right now, those two are developing into some of the best leaders that I've been around, and you give them those opportunities to do that and to be a leader, and they're not afraid to talk to their teammates. They're not afraid to do those things, and it's always been my philosophy, and I've talked about this. I don't know if I've talked about it in here, but in our meetings, we want our seniors and we want our older guys to be able to teach the young guys. And when they teach it, then they understand what's going on even better. And when you can teach it, you got a better understanding. And while they're teaching, they're still growing. They're still growing, and now they know some of the whys. Okay, this is why we do it this way. This is why we teach this, and they get a better feel for it, and it makes your team better. And when you got guys that can teach at every position, that's when you talk about and Coach Morris mentioned this a while back. And it may have been somewhere around me today, but his words were, we're not trying to build a team, we're trying to build a program. And when you're building a program, that's the way you do it. When you got older guys that can teach and get those younger guys ready to play and be the leaders on your football team.
Following up on that, Coach, where would you say Chad is in implementing what he wants to do to get this program into contention?
Well, I think it's moving in the right direction. There's no question about that. I'm not going to evaluate, in terms of where he is, other than the fact that I'm going to say it's moving in the right direction. And it starts with all the coaches buying in, and then all the players buying in, and right now the difference, it's almost, I want to say night and day, but it's so much different than it was at this time last year. I think we have more trust. I think our players trust us more. I think that there's no doubt in my mind that they're buying into the things that that coach has given them.
Any more questions for Chief?
Thank you, guys.